We're going to be talking about pitching to executives and how you transition a privacy silo group to a data protection office that's fully resourced and synergistically working across the business. So we're going to explore how data management, data privacy, and AI governance teams can work together. And we'll learn about the best strategies that Heather has come across in securing resources to support that program. So Heather's background, she is a data privacy plus expert with experience leading digital initiatives across diverse organizations. For example, she's had data protection roles at Nordstrom, which is one of my favorite stores, and Expedia Group, which is another one of my favorite places. And now she serves as the Senior Director of Data Privacy and Protection at Outreach, which is a sales execution platform. All right, folks, so the drill is we spend 10 to 15 minutes talking one-on-one, me and Heather, and then we will turn off the recording, and then we'll open it up to audience Q&A. So one final reminder before we get kicked off here is that all of the information shared in today's session is for general information purposes only. It is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, please seek the help of a lawyer for your particular matter. All right, Heather, you ready to hop in?
Yes, just one small disclaimer on top of that. Any opinions expressed during this session are that of myself and not of my employer or any companies that I support via my independent consulting firm.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Okay, Heather. So we've talked a bit in the past about data management, data privacy, and AI governance, and how those three different departments have synergies. Can you let us know like your feelings on that and like how those are all starting to come together?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest thing here is that privacy ends up being an output of a solid data management program. AI governance ends up being a viable output as the result of having solid data management and solid data privacy in place. And that's the reason that all three of these programs really have these synergies across them. The other thing is that typically there are a lot of groups that are involved in all three of them. And so some examples here are your data protection office is likely involved in all three of those for a variety of reasons and slightly different mindsets, but still putting that expertise in there. Your IT group is going to be a part of those compliance. Your legal team will be a part of all three of those programs. And as a result, if you have all three of them sitting together and being managed and overseen by a core group, you're able to get synergies across all three of them, as well as being able to effectively utilize the time of those experts that you need across all three. Interestingly, for a majority of the other impacted groups, they are typically at least they'll impact at least two of those programs. Great example. HR has an impact on data management and privacy. And so as a result of that, I have these very strong feelings, and some may disagree with them, but that all three of those programs need to be centralized within a data protection office. There's another piece around this because a lot of pushback that I've gotten in the past is if you have privacy or a compliance group managing data, how do you ensure that it aligns with what it is that your product and engineering folks are doing? Why wouldn't they own it? And the feedback on that is number one, you never have your control group do their auditing. Your compliance teams are in the business of writing policies and ensuring that you are providing a lighthouse on the hill, if you will, for what it is you do and do not do with your information. This is not something that engineers or product folks specialize in typically. And so it's providing that support to them to give them that guiding light, but with appropriate documentation. The other impact of that is that when you are looking at individuals that are working in these fields, you're then able to set the core across all of your policies with non-siloed collaboration. And I recognize those two words automatically come together, but when you're thinking about putting together a suite of policies that are supposed to rely on each other, your privacy policies really should be relying on what it is that you have in the way of data management policies. All of that requires that these groups are coming together and collaborating in a non-siloed approach. If you have a group that is accustomed to writing those, that is very dedicated to collaboration within these teams, you're not going to have to worry about having a lack of information to produce those policies because that team is ingesting information from their tech teams. And at the same time, you're building relationships that then allow for those teams to trust those compliance teams and allow for them to have a vested stake in what it is that's being produced. And that's the reason that I continually advocate for all three of these programs to sit within a single data protection office.
Wow, I love that. And the added benefit sounds like you won't have to like beg people for information to do the job that you were hired to do, and you're not chasing people because you're all part of the same unit. So how have you seen that, or how do you envision that structurally? Like who comes together? Who do they report to? How do you deal with these differentiating groups, like maybe wanting to be in control or what have you? How do you make that a reality?
So I think the biggest part there is really focusing on collaboration. You have a lot of opinions flying around. And one of the things that you're offering to these groups is a set of expertise that they don't have. And honestly, time and work investment, resource investment that they also probably don't have. I don't know about the rest of the folks here, but I will tell you right now, our engineering team is strapped for time. They don't have time to focus on building out these policies. What they do have time for is to be able to sit down and have a conversation. And so you're giving them, hey, these are the benefits of allowing us to kind of manage this overall program. All we need is your brain and your commitment to implement this, typically in a slowly rolled out approach, because Rome wasn't built in a day and neither was implementing new requirements. And so that's really how you get the support to have ownership sit with you and your team while giving them a sense of partial ownership and investment in the program. A lot of times these programs will sit in different departments. And so, and I'll give you a great example. My background, which you mentioned at Expedia, I oversaw privacy and data governance from the product and tech team. At Nordstrom, I oversaw privacy and data management in the legal team. And here at Outreach, I started in our security team overseeing privacy and third-party risk management, and then moved into the legal team where I have taken on data management and AI governance. There's no really good single place that you can place folks in a business. Ultimately, the best place for all three of these programs probably does sit in a data office, but depending on the size of your company, you may not have that. And so it's really about the teams that you're engaging with. And so with data management, you're going to be engaged with your technology teams, your product teams, your information technology teams, HR. There's a whole list of them, which unfortunately I will not be able to remember off the top of my head here. Um, but as you're looking at building those programs out, one of the things that you're able to give to your stakeholders, and I use technology as usually my baseline for everything because no privacy program, data management program, or AI governance program gets done without the support of your engineering teams. It just, if you can't get them on board, you're dead in the water. And so as a result of that, you're offering them, look at all the benefits that this offers you. Ultimately, that's the same carrot that you give to the other teams that you need involved to provide feedback, but from a slightly different perspective. And that's the reason that it doesn't really matter where it sits. It's about how you collaborate with your stakeholders and how you show them this is the benefit to you. And I'm actually going to give an example here. Data management is a hard one to implement. There's quite a bit of investment that needs to happen that doesn't necessarily drive revenue. It can, and it definitely can, and demonstrating how it can is actually how you can get funding, which I know we'll get to here in a moment. But When you think about the other intangible benefits that you offer to these groups, one example is, hey, we need data management so that when we start to bring on a ton of new engineers, because we went through, as an example, in a startup, a new funding round, how do we get them onboarded without having to rely on institutional knowledge? Well, you rely on your data management, your ability to notate your metadata, your ability to know where your inventory is, what your data models look like, how data flows in your system, etc. And so you're actually able to say, like, this is how this program actually directly benefits what you do on a daily basis, while also getting me to the ability to say, this is where we have privacy impacting data, and this is what we need to be able to do with it. A lot of getting folks on board with anything is demonstrating what's in it for them, the WIFM, if you will.
Yeah. And I love your point about if you don't have the engineering team, like if you have like a technology product, if you don't have them on board, you're dead in the water. Or you just have a privacy program or a data management program that exists on paper. But really what we want is having this actually work in reality. So you touched on the investments needed. What's coming to mind is the communication between those teams and this new office. I'm sure you require staff, potentially technology. How do you go ahead and get budget and buy-in and your leadership team on board to fund this better functioning structure?
Yeah, and there's a few different ways to do that. I will say anything that you can tie back to the ability to generate revenue gets you a lot further in being able to get approval for additional headcount or tools than saying this is the risk or the revenue that we protect. Oftentimes what you hear is, well, what's the risk here if we don't do this? And throwing out, well, the ICO build the AWS, almost $1 billion for not doing something correctly. The output from that conversation is typically, yeah, but we're not AWS, or but we're not doing that. And there's a lot of conversation that goes around that. And because there's no very basic fee structure on this equates to this fee, it's very hard to be able to say, well, we're protecting X amount of revenue with any really good data to support it, other than this is what happened to someone else. If you flip that conversation over to, as an example, if we invest $250,000 in a data management system and you're paying $300,000 to a single developer that takes them 6 months to understand our data models, it's a lot easier to financially demonstrate how that one purchase actually will provide positive impact to those departments. And when you think about, oh, we need to have an extra privacy head, well, what's that privacy head going to be doing? That privacy head is going to be on calls with customers generating revenue. Where I'm at, I'm actually able to directly attribute this number of phone calls that we joined, where we had customers that were on the edge, weren't sure if they could trust us with their data, generated X amount of revenue because we provided them comfort in what it was that we were doing. And so executives respond much better to, this is the amount of revenue that we can actually push to generate versus this is the revenue that we may or may not be protecting.
You just blew my mind with that. Um, I am so thankful for this conversation because you've changed a lot of things that have been running around in my head lately. But really what it sounds like is this data management is the investment in the source of truth that all of these departments rely on. And so if you can get the executives to fund legitimate data management, then everybody wins. And then also using privacy as a way to attract more customers because some deals do die at the end because it's like a compliance nightmare and they can't get the answers that they want, or there are competitors that had a much smoother process. I really love that take, Heather. Thank you for sharing that. All right, let's open up to audience questions. So we'll go ahead and turn off the recording and feel free, folks, to ask your questions. I think we have a couple in the chat.